Hi, everyone. My name is Tim from Digitalocean. Welcome back if you've joined one of our previous webinars, or welcome if this is your first one. We're really excited today to have a really great group of panelists. One of our largest segments of customers here at DO is our agencies and web dev shops, folks working with clients and managing clients' infrastructure. And we thought it'd be super helpful to have a couple really successful companies that are great at doing that, talk a little bit about how they what they've used before in the past, and talk a little bit about how they approach bringing new clients onto the platform. So as always, if you have a question, feel free to use the right side panel to ask questions. I'll be moderating that on the side. So if you guys have questions for any of our panelists, feel free at any time to ask them, and we'll get into that. But let's get started. We're going to do a quick round of introductions just to make sure you all know who's on the line, and then we'll get into some specific questions. So why don't we start with my right, as I'm looking at the screen, Greg from White Rabbit. Greg, do you want to just tell the audience a little bit about yourself and White Rabbit?
Yeah. So my name is Greg Bellinger. I'm the CEO and partner of White Rabbit Group. I come from a development background, started hard coding websites back in about 2007, 2008. And we are, we're White Rabbit Group. We're a team of 34 people. We've got 3 offices. We focus on just UI, UX design and development. We don't do marketing, SEO. We don't do branding. And, quite simply, we build web and mobile apps. And on top of that, we specifically build for other agencies and creative studios. So we partner with a lot of agencies, well-known agencies, pretty much globally. So, yeah.
An agency that works with other agencies, which is
correct.
A great example. Cool. And your headquarters is based in Seattle, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we've got an office in our HQ's in Seattle. So right, Capitol Hill.
So if you are from Seattle, you're well represented here because we'll introduce Cameron and Afel, who is also headquartered in Seattle. Cameron, why don't you tell us a little bit about Afel?
Hey, yeah, so I'm Cameron Van Orman, Systems Administrator at Afel. Afel Creative, we're a full brand agency. We do everything from SEO, PPC type management for clients to your digital branding, your design, as well as development, and we also offer managed hosting through DigitalOcean. So yeah,
awesome.
That's for the most part kind of what I do. We, as an agency, we mainly focus with a lot of e-commerce clients, a lot of professional services type clients. So we work with law firms, we work with construction firms, dental firms, you name it. But yeah, from the e-commerce side, that's mostly where we do a lot of our consumer branding. So we work with a lot of consumer brands there, and then partner with a few platforms like BigCommerce and Shopify as well.
And Cameron, how many websites do you have right now currently hosted on DO?
If I were to guess, it'd probably be around 270, maybe a little bit less than that. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of websites.
Yeah. We have a lot of servers. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of droplets. Cool. And then finally, our last guest, not from Seattle, from Minneapolis, Yvonne from a great agency called 10-7. I want you to tell the audience a little bit about you guys and what you're trying to do with 10-7.
Thanks, Tim. Ivan Stegic, I'm the CEO and founder at 10-7. We've been around since about 2007, and I also have a little bit of a developer background like Greg does. But 10-7 focuses on creating and caring for Drupal-powered websites. So our niche is Drupal. We do everything from the very beginning, user experience, user interface design, including all the content strategy, through Drupal development, implementation, and managed hosting as well. And we will also take new clients on that have Drupal sites that need to be supported. So we have an audit, improve, care process. And we basically use DigitalOcean as our infrastructure partners. So any clients that want to host with us, we host on a Kubernetes powered system that we have at DigitalOcean, but we also use other vendors as well, just like whatever our clients' needs are, that's what's most important. But we love DigitalOcean, so.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I was so excited to get this specific group is while they're all agencies, they all are very eclectic in terms of their approach. So you saw Yvonne just mentioned Kubernetes and Drupal. Cameron just mentioned e-commerce and working with a couple of e-commerce folks. And then Greg and White Rabbit specifically market to other agencies. So I think you just got a really nice view into how many different kinds of companies you can run on DO, and also just I think from an agency's perspective, how you can have different focus areas and be very successful. So thank you all. And again, oh, sorry, go for it, Yvonne.
I was going to say, I forgot to say, even though I'm based in Minneapolis and we have some employees in Minneapolis, we're a team of about 10 and we're totally distributed. So we do have people out in Portland and Austin and other places across the US. So we're kind of work from home all the time.
Gotcha. So this has been a little easier of a transition for you guys than.
Yeah, what transition, I think.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, well, let's get into the first question. Again, I'll remind everyone, if you're just joining, to feel free, if you have questions, if you're an agency and you have questions about running your company or using DO, feel free to ask in the chat panel pane, which is someone putting out is on the right-hand side if you're on a desktop, but might be below if you're on a mobile device. But first question for the group is, and I know you all have specialties, and I know a lot of the times clients, whether they be an agency coming to you or a client coming to you, will come with a specific project in mind that requires certain tech to run it. But when a new client or prospect comes to any of your agencies and wants to start working, how do you usually make tech decisions for them? Do you have a set amount of technology that every client is going to run on, or is everything custom based off of what they're trying to build? Cameron, why don't we start with you, and then we'll get everyone's opinion on that one.
Yeah, so we kind of do things a little bit differently as most like dev shops. We basically have a package. So we build our own CMS within the agency called Fusion CMS. We then provide that along with our projects. So we do a full design, do the full development and whatnot on our platform. And that kind of gives us the full control for our clients for what they're kind of seeking. So we're able to take our platform, integrate it with, another API or another sort of platform like Shopify or BigCommerce. And I don't know, we do have some clients that do ask for things that are outside of that, whether it's a static site, landing page, something like that. We do offer WordPress development as well, but that's just not necessarily our primary focus. A lot of what we're trying to do is kind of manage brands for companies. So doing so means that we kind of have to have the custom tools and software to kind of support that.
So I think we're kind of similar to Cameron in that because we are focused on Drupal, we already have a set of requirements that have to be met to be able to host Drupal. And what we've been working really hard on is coming up with a solid open source way of providing support and hosting for our Drupal clients, our clients that run Drupal. And so we use Kubernetes and we use Docker, and it's kind of like Cameron, it's a package deal. If our clients want to host with us, this is what they get. They get the stack that we have, but we don't force our clients to do that, because some of our clients are large institutions that might already have contracts and arrangements with companies like Acquia or Pantheon, and so at that point we have to adjust the way we work. And so we're not technology agnostic. We kind of have opinions.
Yeah, then I think for the White Rabbit side, we're almost the opposite, because we set up it's all custom. It's really dependent on what the client's needs are. Some of our agency partners, some of our agency partners aren't technical at all, and they're really looking for us to be that solid backbone to come up with solutions. And obviously, we'll hop on a meeting, we'll talk about the project scope, and then from there, set up the server environment or what's needed. And then on the other spectrum, we have very technical partners where they're like, this is our stack, this is what we're doing. They'll even come to us with their hosting environment, and that's what we're going to integrate into. So from our side, it looks a little bit different, because we're building on WordPress, also Drupal, Magento, and then we've got Shopify, which are closed systems, and then fully custom built web applications. Obviously, it might be, a Ruby build. Our main stack that we go to internally is a React Laravel, so that's PHP. And so it really just depends on the project and client needs.
So that's really interesting. So Greg, that obviously gives you guys incredible flexibility to sort of deal with whatever is incoming. Yvonne or Cameron, have you guys ever lost business because of because the project was too out of scope and you felt like it would have required too much of a burden for your team to have to figure out how to actually support it?
Oh yeah. There's definitely some clients that dream a lot bigger than I guess what you're capable of delivering for them. So it's a rare chance that you find a client that you're not able to accommodate, you're not able to develop a solution for. But yeah, we've had some projects that have either come through with kind of a small budget and something that we just wouldn't be able to take in internally for our company and be able to provide that service to them. So sometimes we'll do some small things for those companies or those clients to kind of get them started with their business or with their idea. But if it's like a full-fledged project that maybe they wouldn't be able to fit our budget for our company, we kind of give them the resources to go find another agency that might provide that service at the budget that they have.
Yeah, I think budget drives a whole lot as well. I think Drupal is so flexible that you can basically build anything you want out of it. And when people come to us and they want something that, is a Rolls Royce, but they have the budget of a Mini, like there's not a whole lot that we can do about that. And the best that we can do is kind of give them the counsel to say, okay, these are other agencies that could help you. Maybe consider someone who's a freelancer, start bootstrapping something. So I like to answer your question. I don't know that we could even quantify how much business we've lost because we are so focused on Drupal. Typically, the leads we get and the people that come to us already know that they want Drupal. And so it's a matter of coming up with something that works for them and for their budget and going from there.
That makes sense. I think what you actually just described really well is why, and this is something that used to frustrate me. I used to do consulting for agencies specifically, and when they would struggle with marketing or positioning, it was usually because they were trying to be everything to everyone. They didn't have a focus. So they would do like White Rabbit, they would be very flexible with their tech stack, but unlike White Rabbit, they also wouldn't have a specific target in mind, or unlike 10.7 or Fell, they wouldn't have specialties. And that made it hard to market and then also hard to deliver when you're just delivering different projects every time one comes in. So Yvonne, I think that's a really nice nod to agency specialty being really important, sort of regardless. And then Greg, I think actually this is sort of a perfect segue into Cameron saying, so, hey, sometimes we need another agency to work with, sort of where you guys come in, right? Like you can support agencies that maybe are dealing with projects that are out of scope for them.
Yeah, actually, that's a lot of, we have a lot of partners where they have kind of their specialty, whether, it might be WordPress, their design team might be really good at like putting together a really good brochure marketing site. Then they'll have a client come to them and they might need a custom, mobile app or like an internal web app that needs to get built out, and they'll come to us for actually those types of deliverables. So when it kind of gets over our partners' heads, that's when we come in as well. And again, like, we focus on just building, and then budget aside, like, we kind of have a saying, like, if you can dream it, we can build it, is one of our sayings, and it's definitely true. So, yeah.
Budget. All comes back to budget, though. You're all
yes, it does.
Right? Yeah, that is right.
Yeah.
Let's take that. We'll put that over here, and yeah. You can dream it, we can build it for sure. So
a lot of things have changed since I've been consulting, but budget and the constant struggle with agencies dealing with clients' budget has never changed. That's been consistent from day one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I bet there's things that are going to change over the next 6 to 12 months that we can't even imagine, given the whole pandemic that's going on now. Like, who knows what's going to be different? I do
want to get. We actually have some good questions coming in, so we'll get to those in 1 second. Keep them coming, everyone who's attending. But just why don't we touch on that real quick? Has if has your business been affected sort of over the last couple months with the pandemic, and then how are you guys dealing with that?
Yeah, I can jump in. For us, White Rabbit, it's the internet, it's only making the internet bigger. And for us being the creators of things on the internet, we haven't, fortunately, we're very, grateful, but things haven't slowed down on our end. And if on the other spectrum, it's kind of speeding up a little bit. So we're kind of getting some interesting estimates and proposals coming in that are, you could see are happening just because of, COVID and the need to get on the internet. So.
Yeah, we've had a mixed bag, I think. Some clients are school districts of ours, and one of them had to put in place an online learning system very, very quickly. And because we're their closest partner and we power all of their online stuff already, it was very easy to get additional help from us in helping them. But then we have other clients who are counties and have had, we've had a long-term plan to build something out, and now all of a sudden the county has emergency response that they have to deal with, and the people in planning and the people in development are now focusing on providing services to citizens, and like the new website is not on their list of priorities. And so we've had projects delayed, but some projects that have kind of been pushed up. And like, I think the rule of thumb for me at least has been, it's the uncertainty that we're dealing with. Like, luckily we haven't had clients that are in retail or restaurants, and so we haven't been we haven't had budgets cut because of that. But I don't know what's going to happen 3 months from now, honestly. And I think that's what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, same here. We do have a lot of professional service clients. So without, I guess, their ability to bring in clients, then yeah, the services that they might be paying for to us, are kind of cut short, or they're having to limit, I guess, what marketing they do per month or for the year. Yeah, lots of uncertainty.
Do you guys feel that, like, even if, so Cameron, they might cut like advertising or brand, do you feel like anything like technology wise will be asked to shut down, or do you think that's sort of the last thing that would be
Yes. So honestly, we've seen some clients, and I don't know if it's because of the ongoing pandemic or if it's just because of the coincidence or timing of it, but we have seen some long-term clients move over to cheaper sort of platforms that they can kind of manage on their own, like site builder type things, but definitely limited in what they can do for SEO or PPC, or just in general being able to make their site fast. They're kind of, stuck with whatever platform is providing that service. So, but it is a better option for some of our clients for, I guess, what it is that they do as a business. We just hope that they kind of keep the design and some of the stuff that we built for them.
Gotcha. Yeah, certainly. I think we can all echo the uncertainty thing. Even if your business is growing, it doesn't. If you feel like you're almost on quicksand a little bit, just because you don't know what's going to happen next. So, but hopefully things improve. But let's get to a question actually that came in. So this one is directed at Greg and Yvonne. But Cameron, I think you could probably speak to this as well. But we'll start with Yvonne here. How did you guys decide for, moving away from development into sort of more of a agency lead, I guess is the best way to say it, and advice for folks maybe looking to do similar. I think in my experience, especially Geo, we have a lot of developers who then are growing their agency, right? And I think that's a really good question of like, when do you need, and really a good question for any company if they're founded by developers, sort of when do they need to step away and focus on the business as opposed to the coding?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I started 10.7 kind of by accident. I was working a job at a startup. I was totally burnt out. I'd had some savings. My wife she's like, you need to quit this job. Just start something of your own. I'm like, I don't know if I can. And had the opportunity, landed a big client at the time, and was able to make ends meet with one major client in the first 3 to 6 months of like existing. So that, I think timing is such an important part of answering this question. So timing is one thing. And then the other thing is, when you start taking on more work, you realize you can't do it all yourself and that you have to hire people. And once you start hiring people, you're no longer a developer full time. You have to start learning about how to run a company. You have to start learning about how to run kind of not just operations, but like managing people and humans. Like, that's skills you have to learn. So it's it's been an interesting road for the last 13 years, and I think I miss writing code. I haven't written code in a while, but it just kind of happens. It kind of evolves, and if you're looking to do the same, I would say try to find an anchor client. If you can find some client that you can have a long-term relationship with, that you can do whatever they want you to do, like that's a good way to start. And maybe, save money before you do that, because you might have some lean times before kind of being able to grow your own company.
Yeah, I think Yvonne hit it pretty perfectly there. That's really good advice. Like my story's, pretty similar. You start out coding, and then you end up, managing, and you continue to scale each thing that you once did into somebody else, right? So I think even, you're asking, how do you become a developer into like multiple people? Obviously, once you get to multiple people and you start growing from there, there's a lot of other things like documentation, et cetera, to set it all up properly. But Yvonne had some good advice. I think on top of that, I would add is to find your niche, find what you're good at, what you can scale upon, and try to envision how you can scale that on what that niche thing is that you decide to do. Like Yvonne, he's on Drupal. That's niche. Drupal's powerful, and so I would say, you have to scale your clients and you have to outgrow yourself. And then on top of that, what do you do as a company? What do you stand for? What's your brand, and what are you offering? And I would say try to get niche.
Yeah, I think that's good advice, Greg. The whole like specialization or niche aspect, that's so important. When I first started, I actually built our first site for that anchor client in Joomla, Drupal, and WordPress, and did it as an experiment for myself to see which one I could handle and understand the best, and the one that gave me the biggest amount of flexibility, had the best community for me, was Drupal. And that's kind of, at that point I was like, okay, we're doing everything in Drupal. This is just how it's going to be. And I'm so glad we decided to kind of become that niche focused, because that was the decision we made, and it served us well so far. So good advice, Greg.
And that was in 2008.
So 2007.
2007, yeah. I remember that. Yeah. It was like WordPress, Joomla, Drupal. Those were like...
That's all it was. Yeah, Drupal 5 was the thing, man.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry for you and any other developers that had to support that.
I think
there was no continuous integration back then. Oh my God.
One thing there that I think is really interesting that you both just pointed out there is, like, if you're going to switch from doing, something you love and that you've grown up doing to maybe something that's a little foreign to you, great advice. Like, focus on something that you passionately care about. Because if you're trying to do sales and marketing and new business, and it's not something that you're passionate about, or you're selling things that you don't feel great about, I think that's going to make that transition a lot harder. I think you have to be passionate about ultimately what you're doing, or at least find a focus area to make it a little bit easier with that transition. So Cameron, going to you. So you're obviously still in a very dev focused role. I guess you can comment on this question from Josh, but also maybe you could comment on, have you ever felt like you wanted to get more involved in running the business, and how have you sort of managed that?
Yeah. So, I mean, our company kind of gives us a lot of autonomy to take ownership on our projects and some of our client projects. So I feel like, to answer this question, a lot of the people in our company are basically building and growing the agency concurrently. So we're not kind of depending on one single person. We're kind of all, making up our goals. We're all meeting together once a week or, daily to discuss those goals and to make sure that we're on track. So as a company, I feel like, Slack is kind of where we communicate, but you see things come through like, our time tracking and, through Basecamp, where we keep track of all of our clients, and you see that work is getting done, and you see that a lot of like good things are happening for our clients. So for me, I've been kind of stepping away from development and doing more of like the systems management or systems administration. That, is it's not really managing people, it's managing servers. You can automate that. You can, script it to behave the way that you want it to. But humans, we're unpredictable. So, it's not really something I have a whole lot of experience in, management and whatnot.
Yeah, that's fair. Also, like, that's a good point. Knowing your strengths and weaknesses, and like if you you can go in a very poor direction if you sort of aren't self-aware about what you're sort of capable of doing or not doing. So hopefully that was helpful, Josh. But feel free to ask ask more follow-up questions. Let's get into another question here that came in. Which asks sort of how do you keep your dev team DNA in sync? So just in general, like how do you guys, how does your dev team function? How do you keep them organized, in sync, working towards the same goals, harmonious? Like however you want to take this, feel free to go with it. Why don't we start with Greg? Why don't you start?
Yeah. So organization and documentation and coming up with a central point where everybody can communicate, right? So for us as a company, we follow Agile, Kanban, and we do some Scrum on some projects, but we set up our boards. We use Teamwork as our project management tool. Everybody, that's our central point. We set up our boards from backlog all the way through to completion, and yeah, to get in sync, you have to have good leaders. So we've, our CTO, and we've got some really good architects and team leads as well. It's about giving them power to create documentation as well, and then be able to discuss that with the team and spread it across a certain process. So, for example, like WordPress, we've got our QA documents that are just for WordPress. We've got different methods of coding, and so documenting that and then putting it in a spot for everybody to be able to review. That's how we stay in sync, is pretty much project management and everything there. So
yeah, I
think go ahead.
Just gonna say I'll add myself to that. Yeah, it's pretty much exactly how our agency operates.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the tool set is an important thing to talk about, and there's so many different ones. And we're currently using Jira, but we're also using Asana. We use Harvest for time tracking, and of course, I don't think we would exist without Slack and Zoom either. But I think part of kind of the higher kind of 10,000 foot view here, 30,000 foot view, is that you need a company and you need leadership that has a mission, that has some sort of values that you can all rally around. There needs to be transparency and communication and being able to take on responsibility and to admit when you're wrong, so that everybody has a voice, so that especially if you're working in a distributed company, you have to be able to treat your team as the adults that they are and trust that they get the work done. And if you have that open communication and you're able to bring up things that are difficult, then I think having a tool set is the easy part. I'm not saying it's not important to have a tool set. You absolutely have to have that, but having this cultural thing to keep your dev team in sync is important as well. And we do something called a DISC analysis that's based on the 5 good behaviors, the 5 bad behaviors the 5 behaviors of a good team, the 5 behaviors of a bad team. There's 2 books there, but we do that. Everybody who works on a team at 10.7 gets their DISC analysis done by an outside HR person, and we get located on a circle, and so it helps us be able to communicate in the best possible way with the others that are on our team as well.
Awesome. I remember doing my last DISC analysis like it was yesterday.
Were you on the top side? Because I'm on the top side.
I was the C. I was like an introvert, like heads down type of person. I think I don't remember where that fell.
A little further down then.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to work at a company where you'd have to do that, and then you'd have to put your results on your cubicle, so that as people walk by, they could understand.
Yeah, but if you're on the bottom side of that DISC analysis and you're not interested in, that's not going to work out very well.
Exactly. It's the opposite. I don't want more attention on it. Yeah. Cool. I think those are all really good answers. I think it's like what applies to the development team applies to the whole company in certain ways. So. Your whole company needs to be aligned around something if your dev team is going to be aligned around something as well. So we're getting a lot of other good questions in there, so I want to address those, but a lot of they're starting to get a little bit more technical, sort of like how did you set this up? So before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit sort of where does DO fall? I think you all addressed this in some ways, but I just want to clarify sort of where does DO fall in your tech stack? What specifically do you use DO for? And then what other technologies do you use to sort of power client projects? Why don't we start with Yvonne? You mentioned Kubernetes. I know you guys are big Kubernetes fans. Why don't we start with you?
Yes, sure. Yeah, so we're big fans of Kubernetes. We kind of started 10.7, and I didn't want to do any hosting. I didn't want to be responsible for any of that. So we had a managed hosting provider. They took care of all of that stuff, right? And as we've grown and as our clients have become bigger, there are different requirements, right? You can't just pay $5 a month to Bluehost and expect your enterprise Drupal site to be running the way that you intended to, right? And so we've kind of, to help our clients, we do things like, if they already have a vendor in place, we'll respect that. And if they want to keep using that, we'll use that vendor. So as part of our DigitalOcean, as part of our tech stack, it's not just DigitalOcean. We use Acquia as well, and we use Pantheon, and we also use platform.sh, depending on what our clients' needs are, right? But anyone who's not hosted with those platforms, they typically either host internally in their own data center, and so we'll help their technology team with whatever they're hosting, with whatever continuous integration or virtualization they need. And if it's not one of those, then they host with us, and we do everything with you at DigitalOcean, and we use Kubernetes to power all of the Docker images so that essentially a developer can check out a Git repo for there to be a Docker image description in that repo that they can fire up locally. We have a product called Flight Deck that is based on Docker, and all of the developers can then have the same environment locally as any other developer. And in fact, those containers are used in our staging environments and in our live infrastructure as well. So there's never a question about which version of a particular library is running somewhere. If we're going to do an update, it happens in the image, it happens using Kubernetes. And then we use spaces at DigitalOcean a great deal. So Kubernetes doesn't like persisting files very nicely, very easily. So you have to figure out how to do that. And using a volume that's shared across different pods and containers typically doesn't work very well either, because you have to. It's really not very fast. So we're kind of using spaces to do all the file serving.
And then, have you used managed Kubernetes offerings from other cloud providers? And if so, how does it compare to DO?
We have. We actually started out by using Google's Kubernetes engine, GKE, and we used the one at AWS. Now I can't remember what it's called. Maybe Greg knows. But we tried all of them, and the thing that kept us coming back to DigitalOcean was actual humans we could talk to, and the fact that the pricing was very easy. So Google Cloud is always like, let's wait for the first month and see what we're going to be paying, and that's not a way to run a business, in my opinion. And they've started to charge, money for all the managed Kubernetes stuff as well. I think the thing that really set apart DigitalOcean was the fact that, like, the Kubernetes stuff is free, right? You pay for the droplets, you pay for the actual processing power and the storage space, and that made a lot of sense to us. It doesn't mean that you couldn't do what we're doing at Google Cloud or at AWS or anywhere else that has the Kubernetes, managed Kubernetes, but we seem to be using you guys. It makes sense for us.
Gotcha. Yeah. Cool. I want to talk about Kubernetes there, but go ahead, Greg.
Yvonne, I think you're talking Amazon EKS, just to answer that
EKS,
question.
Yes, that's right.
But I think to understand, ours is a little bit complex where DO falls in, but to start, I think it's best to start outwards because we work with a lot of different agencies, so not internal, but external. We're, WP Engine, GoDaddy, Bluehost, also Pantheon. Like, I could name 25 different hosting services that we've used with our partners at least. And so if it's not a partner, requirement, and then stepping off kind of the shared, for us as a company, we're building on AWS, DigitalOcean, and Azure. Those are the top three stacks that we're on for custom, web applications. And And then stepping into DigitalOcean, we use DigitalOcean 100% internally. So all of our development is on DigitalOcean. Our hosting that we offer, it's not a big service. Kind of think like Yvonne, we don't push super hard on hosting. We'd rather have a client set up their own hosting environment, and then we jump in and do all the sysadmins, DevOps, set it up, all of that. So DigitalOcean, we're using it all internally for our shared hosting, for our development environments. And then we use DigitalOcean on the client side. Let's say that we're setting up like a small micro web app, a connector application. We'll use DigitalOcean, fire up a droplet for that. And then we do have some scalable, web applications as well, where we have droplets, spaces, and then we're also using the load balancer to run that. So, and those are kind of the top DO services that we use. But yeah, we're also internally building an application for deployment that's all on DigitalOcean as well. So, we definitely love DigitalOcean. So yeah.
Do you guys notice any difference when you have a customer that's using a shared hosting provider versus someone that's on AWS, Azure, or DO, or does it doesn't matter because of the type of site that they're running?
It's controllability. It's the difference is controllability. So it's running that certain stack on the server that's intended for that site. And there were a lot of, for example, when PHP were released in 7.2, there were a lot of hosting companies that were months behind to releasing that, whereas like WordPress or whatever, they were a step of the curve. We're ready to go on PHP, and then we're sitting there waiting for those hosting companies. So that's the biggest thing. I think as you continue to scale a company, DigitalOcean and a service like DigitalOcean just becomes that much more critical. So you can have that, that you can customize it to what's needed. So
gotcha. That makes sense. And then Cameron, as we go to you, we actually had a couple specific questions. So I'll put one up that you can address during your answer here. But yeah, why don't you talk a little bit about FL and it's sort of same question. How do you guys what does your tech stack look like? And maybe you can also answer JV's question as well during that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, our tech stack right now, we're kind of using majority PHP applications to power all of our websites. But we have a CMS that we've developed over the last 15 years, and we have that hosted in between Rackspace and DigitalOcean. So far, it's been kind of a straddling both sort of providers to try and migrate clients over to DigitalOcean to their own individual droplets. But we have new versions of our CMS that just come in like a composer package. You just install it like you would any other composer package. You can basically install it directly through Laravel if you want to, and utilize it just like that. And then we have a proprietary version of our CMS that we offer to our clients. And that one, we mainly hosted in DigitalOcean. So I'd say a majority of our internal and external clients are on DigitalOcean. And we have in the past used, Media Temple, Linode. Rackspace is kind of where I guess a majority of our cost is. I wouldn't say it's a majority of where our clients are, but managed hosting is expensive. So if you can avoid it and go to something like, a droplet where the service is reliable, the hardware is reliable. We have droplets that have been up for 3 years and we've never had to reboot it. So it's nice to know that you can have that low cost, hardware powering your entire agency's, website, internal tools, things like that. But to answer that question, how difficult was it on DigitalOcean to set up the custom CMS? It was really simple. Even for our old legacy CMS that we built probably in 2008, 2009, and then kind of iterated over time, that we now just have it going through like a Packer image, and we have that on DigitalOcean. We just spin up droplets from there and migrate the client's content over and hook it up to a database, and it's really simple. Our Git workflow and whatnot makes it really simple to deploy files directly to the droplets. We have, probably 4 or 5 different repositories syncing up with the droplets, and then our CMS, with all the internal networking tools that are available at DigitalOcean, we're able to kind of securely SSH in each droplet to manage things like files, manage things like the database. So we have a lot of custom applications being powered on multiple providers, but DigitalOcean really makes kind of things fly for our agency.
Yeah, if I could jump in there, I think what I forgot to mention that's actually a big part of our workflow is the DigitalOcean API. We use that all the time. Like, we would not be able to run our Kubernetes clusters without that API, because we don't actually create those droplets manually on the dashboard. Anytime we do a push to our Git repos, there's automation that takes care of destroying the all of the droplets that need to be destroyed for new containers to get up on new droplets with new updates, and all of that would not be possible without the API. And I know Tess, our DevOps engineer, would be really upset if I hadn't have mentioned that. So like, that's the other part that really works for us.
Yeah, props to the
and
API.
It's simple too.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that, Cameron, you guys are using the APIs for triggering on your end?
Almost predominantly we're interacting with the API to do everything from running snapshots programmatically. So we have an internal tool that allows us to set up a schedule for those. I know a lot of people use like SnapShooter, but we didn't really want to put the cost towards it. So we've been slowly building our own internal tools to kind of replace those things. We even have our own internal tool for all of our, credentials, vaults, basically. So yeah,
that's awesome.
All powered on DigitalOcean.
Yeah, I think we're in the process of that right now. We haven't quite gotten into the APIs, but we're, like I mentioned earlier, we're building out a deployment platform that's obviously all, API driven, but that's cool.
We have another question that I want to get to, but real quick, because Cameron just touched on it. In terms of monitoring, making sure client sites are up, dealing with escalations, how do you guys all do that? Cameron mentioned sort of SnapShooter there for backups, but how does that look like in all of your individual companies?
Oh, you guys are muting. I'm going to jump in. You guys are muting.
I was going to call on someone, but I figured you guys, it's a fascinating subject. I figured you'd all want to jump in at once.
Well, let's see. We use Status Cake to make sure everything's up, and we have that hooked into our Asana and into Slack. And then in terms of backups, we actually we use an open source product called Tractor Beam. And it will do any kind of backup of any website that is based on PHP and MySQL. And it backs it up to DigitalOcean S3, then it goes to AWS, and then it goes to Google Cloud as well. So we're effectively making snapshots on an hourly or weekly basis. And because we don't care about how the droplets are configured, all of that is actually in code in the configuration of the Dockers and in the Kubernetes config. We don't back any of that up because it's all in Git. So we could spin up new droplets and just get our backups from S3, and we'd be fine.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah, I think from our end, you probably have to ask our sysadmin, our CTO team to get a little more detailed. But very similarly, Yvonne, we depending on the application, it's all dependent. But in regards to backups, we'll send same thing. We'll send it over to S3, store it there. We use services like Uptime Robot to make sure things are in check. But yeah.
Yeah, we actually built our own monitoring tool. It's called Apollo. So our lead application developer, that's kind of his little internal baby on top of the CMS. So, but it's been a nice thing to track about 300 plus client websites, and it pings it every minute. And we'll just come back with the status as well as how fast the site was. So it kind of gives us an indicator of like latency or other issues that we may not see just from our office. Because we have a gigabit connection in our office, so it's probably not likely we'll see too much latency to our servers in San Francisco. But yeah, I mean, pretty much kind of like what you guys said, we kind of depend on a lot of third parties to help ensure that all of our backups are, off-site or, not necessarily on the droplet itself.
Gotcha.
We've only ever had a droplet like catastrophically fail once, and it's never happened again. That was like 5 years ago. So
Oof.
I would basically say that DigitalOcean has an uptime that's a lot better than other providers. One failure in 5 years is pretty good. So.
And that is everyone's worst nightmare.
Yeah, waking up to my site's not coming up. You're like, huh, weird. No, let me just take a look in here. Yeah, your droplet's not responding.
Not a fun morning.
No.
So Cameron, actually, we'll go in this question. I think we can all address this question because while it's sort of a little bit more specific to Cameron, I think we could talk a little bit about sort of moving, and this doesn't need to be DO specific. It could just be moving from another provider to another provider. But Cameron, do you want to speak a little bit about sort of your experience with Rackspace? You mentioned sort of pricing and that being a big component about this, but yeah, do you want to speak to Fred's question?
Yeah, so we in Rackspace, we had kind of a monolithic setup. So we had an expensive, load balancer, hardware based, not cloud based. We had an expensive firewall that we were paying for, as well as 8 web servers that weren't any bigger than probably a $20 droplet. And it was costing us, probably $12,000+ a month for it. But basically, we decided that because of that cost and because it's really difficult to be able to scale your clients on those web servers, we needed something that was more, something that we could manage internally, since we were managing those servers in Rackspace, despite it being managed. We were doing a lot of that on top of trying to sort of build up our client base on DigitalOcean. So it's been a long time coming as far as us transitioning clients over to DigitalOcean, but it's been a matter of like bandwidth, not necessarily. We don't have the tech or the capacity to actually move or migrate those files. We just don't really have the time to do so. Agencies are pretty busy. So I don't know for you guys, but for migrating, 200+ clients, it's taken us about a year to do it without using like an API to do it. So, but yeah, and we kind of to touch on that question, we build a lot of other custom things like reverse proxies to kind of integrate with SaaS platforms. So it's kind of a burden, I would say, because you can never guess at what you're going to be sort of finding at the other end, what that provider has for you, because a reverse proxy is very static to that provider that you're creating.
Yeah, I think just jumping in, my advice, not being DevOps sysadmin from my side on the tech, but my advice would just be, there's a reason why Rackspace is, they've scaled to where they are. It's highly secure. It's a managed service. And when going to DigitalOcean, you don't have any of that. You don't have, security is obviously top of mind. So I would just say from my end, just make sure that you know how to configure those servers and that you have somebody that is really doing it properly and that is around to support that. I think that's a really important key to moving over to DigitalOcean from Rackspace.
Yeah, that support that you can get, that you can like call someone or email someone or chat with someone. That's so important if you're actually the one doing the managed support, right? You're the one taking on the managed services and not the Rackspace, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm doing a lot of the on-call support as well as our other support team. So it's a job for sure, but it's a lot cheaper, in my opinion, than sort of paying a company and hoping that hoping that your SLA is adhered to. But yeah, with DigitalOcean, everything is kind of templatized in terms of how we set up our droplets. So we're not worried about configurations being wrong. We're not worried about there being some security hole. It's like, if there's a security hole, then probably 200+ servers probably have that hole, and we need to patch that quickly. And yeah, we have tools to be able to do that. So being able to maintain your servers over time really kind of makes your job easier and will probably reduce those catastrophic failures in the future. But I know being on like a monolithic provider with monolithic servers, it's really difficult to migrate, 100 clients or 50 clients off of one server, because you're having to coordinate DNS updates with all of those clients versus just moving them off and sending them an email with like a new IP address for their droplet. It's been a lot smoother for us to onboard people with DigitalOcean than it has been in the past.
Speaking of migrations, we got a question from Kurt here. Any advice on moving? And I think you all actually just touched on this a little bit, but if you want to get into any more specifics, any advice on migrating 368 clients from WordPress gracefully? I think Cameron, you just mentioned there's some pain involved no matter what you're doing here. But anyone want to give Kurt any advice on this process?
I have thoughts. Yeah, maybe 2 bottles of whiskey.
Yeah. No, it's going to be a very manual process. I can say that. So unless you have your databases away from WordPress engine, which is unlikely, everything is kind of centralized in that one account, and you're kind of used to that dashboard interface to manage all of your sites. I would recommend doing something like Run Cloud or we use Laravel Forge as a service, and that really makes our process for setting up new sites and servers really easy. But we just use snapshots for like images, basically for anything that we're migrating over. So with that, we just create a new droplet and then sync the files over as well as the database.
And I think I would recommend coming up with as much automation for your sites as possible. Invest in the knowledge of what Kubernetes is. Get an expert that you hire that is an employee, whether full-time or part-time, or if you have a DevOps person, make sure they know something about Kubernetes, because I think that's going to make your whole life a lot easier than managing individual droplets and managing individual services. And I would also say, consider some of the managed services that DigitalOcean has. We haven't used the database that you guys have that are managed. You have a MySQL managed service like that. Just because of how we've orchestrated our Kubernetes and our database, it just doesn't make sense for us to use that. But it might make sense for others where, like, if you can get that database layer off your plate and let DigitalOcean worry about it, probably a good thing. Same with Spaces. If you can worry about, like, not have to worry about that file storage and not worry about managing an NFS that's shared across 368 or 86 WordPress sites, like, that's an even easier. So, like, try to offload that stuff and then put everything in code. Don't rely on someone who configured Apache to know how to reconfigure that Apache server again and again and again and have someone else do it. Put all of that in YAML files, put all of it in code, and there's good ways to do that.
Nice. And Kurt has already started.
I saw that.
All right, so we've been going for 50 minutes. So I think it's appropriate to start to wrap things up. I guess we'll end, and I think the pandemic and COVID has affected this, but I still want to ask this question, and then we can end here. And by the way, just a quick piece of advice: if anyone's interested in getting in contact with these guys, the links to their websites are below, and we'll share other contact information as well, just in case. But what's one, like, project, initiative, company goal that you guys are excited about for your agency heading into the rest of the year? Greg, why don't we start with you, and then we'll get everyone's opinion, and then we'll end for the day.
So what are we most excited about for, like, this year as an agency?
Yeah, keeping in mind that I'm sure a lot has changed given the last couple months.
Yeah, I mean,
I put you on the spot, by the way. I apologize for.
No, you're good. I'm just trying to. There's so many of them. Like, we have, we're growing as a team. We have, future office expansions. Yeah, just top of mind. Like, as an agency, we're growing, and we're looking at opening up another office in kind of Central South America. And so for us, that's first thing that comes to my mind that I'm pretty excited about. And just really excited about the team that we're growing in general. We've got a really amazing team. So yeah, just growing, and that's the first thing that comes to my mind, and how we're going to do that and all that. And so, yeah.
Opening an office in another country is amazing in and of itself. So that is fantastic.
Yeah.
Cool. Cameron, what about you and Afel?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a lot of marketing initiatives going on. We're always kind of expanding that as well as our services. But kind of the big thing for me and what I'm really excited about is our V6 platform. So Fusion CMS, we've been developing it, like I mentioned, over the last 15 years. We recently decided to open source it, which means that anybody from the community can go and contribute to it. It is based on Laravel. The cool thing about it, and this is kind of what gets my heart beating, is you can just install it like a composer package. You don't need any other dependencies. You can bring it on into your project, have the full admin interface, basically have WordPress, at your fingertips without the WordPress. Get the Blade templating, view, Tailwind or Bootstrap if you want it. It's kind of agnostic in that sense, but it's an amazing platform, and our team has worked really hard over the last several years to rebuild it. Basically, I wouldn't say from scratch, but to rebuild it from the proprietary iteration that we had. And this is a long time coming for our company to be able to offer that to the world. So please check it out.
Yeah, Cameron,
congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, can you drop a link in or share a link, or I'll put it in the description, or I'll share it here, but that'd be great.
Yeah. I'll drop it in the chat here real quick.
That's great. I'm so glad. I love it when I hear companies that have been proprietary for a while decide to open source their things and make, contribute it out to the world and have it, see what else can be, what else. I mean, there's so many possibilities that could come out of this, right?
Yeah.
It's just great.
Yeah.
So awesome. I'm kind of on the same lines as you. I'm looking forward to the release of Drupal 9 in June, mostly because it's supposed to be a non-event for upgrades, and everything I've seen thus far means that it's probably going to be exactly that. Like, there isn't going to be this giant curve that we're going to have to go through to get an upgrade from Drupal, like there was from Drupal 6 to 7 or from 7 to 8. Drupal 8 to Drupal 9 is just a point release. It's deprecating some older, libraries that are still around in Drupal 8. Like, it should be a non-event. So I'm really looking forward to that. It makes sales calls and clients a whole lot, easier and happier. So that's one thing. And the other thing I'm looking forward to is episode 100 of the 10.7 podcast that should be live sometime in November, I think, is when we're publishing, I think, episode 88 and this week. And I think, 100's a nice milestone. So I'm looking forward to that. But then I'm also looking forward to everybody, getting healthy and there being some sort of vaccine for COVID-19. I mean, I think that's on top of mind for everyone as well. I'm sure that's going to happen. We just have to put good scientific research and work into that, and then that'll happen too.
Yeah, I think we can echo that. I think, I usually end these by saying, like, we hope wherever you are, you're staying safe and healthy. And yeah, I think everyone is looking forward to that. So, well, I just want to say thank you to everyone. So we have Greg here from White Rabbit Group. They're an agency based in Seattle. We have Cameron from FL Creative, also based in Seattle. And then we have Yvonne from 10.7, based in Minneapolis, but as he mentioned, also has staff spread out around the globe. But thank you guys. This was a fantastic session. I think we had multiple comments that said thank you for addressing their questions and for helping. So we really appreciate it. If you want to get in touch with any of these companies for anything, again, their links are included below, and we'll make sure we add sort of any links that they brought up. I think that they brought up a couple different tools. Cameron brought up the open source CMS. Yvonne brought up his podcast. We'll make sure we include those in the description as well. But thanks everyone for attending. Great questions. Thanks for the engagement. And Greg, Cameron, and Yvonne, thank you guys again for doing this. We really appreciate it.
This was fun. Thank you.
Wonderful.
All right.
So much fun.
Yeah. Guys. And I hope everyone's staying safe, and we'll see you on the next broadcast.